Have you ever met someone who did not try to impress anyone, and yet somehow became the most memorable person in the room? They were not louder than everyone else, they were not performing, they were not asking for attention. But the moment they entered the space, something changed. The energy slowed down, people felt it. They seemed calm, grounded, and quietly powerful. That kind of presence is rare, and that is exactly why it is so attractive on Stoicism Breath. This is where the conversation begins. Because real magnetism does not come from appearance, status, or performance. It comes from inner energy. It comes from the kind of strength that does not need to announce itself. In a world where almost everyone is trying to stand out, there is something deeply powerful about the person who no longer feels the need to compete for attention. The Stoics understood this well. They believe that the more anchored you are within yourself, the less you need to chase validation from the outside world, and strangely, that is what makes people drawn to you. True attraction is not about forcing others to notice you, it is about creating a feeling when people are around you, a feeling of ease, a feeling of steadiness, a feeling of peace. People are not always pulled toward the most beautiful person in the room. They are often pulled toward the person who makes them feel safest, most understood, and most at ease. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a calm mind is the foundation of inner beauty, and that idea still speaks directly to modern life, because today so many people are exhausted by noise, pressure, and emotional chaos. When someone can remain composed in the middle of all that, it stands out immediately. When you stay calm in the face of criticism, kind in the face of indifference, and steady even when misunderstood, you create a kind of beauty that does not fade with time. It is not dependent on trends, age, or approval. It is built from self-control and self-respect, and that is the kind of presence that naturally earns trust, respect, and quiet admiration. That is why on Stoicism Breath we begin with a simple but powerful habit: truly listen. In an age where everyone wants to share, react, and be heard, real listening has become rare. Most people are not listening to understand, they are listening to reply. While the other person is speaking, their mind is already busy preparing a response, a defense, or a story of their own. But Stoic wisdom teaches something different. It teaches that only a still mind can hear what truly matters, not just the words, but the meaning behind them, not just the sentence, but the emotion behind the sentence. Epictetus once said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more than we speak. The teaching is simple, but it carries enormous depth, because true listening is not just about hearing sounds, it is about offering presence. When you listen with full attention, you give someone a gift that has become rare in modern life. You make them feel seen, understood, and respected. Think about the people you feel safest around. They are usually not the ones who talk the most, they are the ones who let you finish your thoughts. They do not interrupt, they do not glance at their phone, they do not rush to fix you, they simply stay present, and that presence alone makes you feel that your story matters. This is why a true listener has such powerful magnetism. They do not need fancy words to make an impact. Their silence already communicates strength. The Stoics saw silence not as weakness, but as self-control. The ability to stay quiet and receive someone fully means your ego is no longer fighting for attention. You are not trying to win, you are not trying to prove anything, you are making room to understand. And that humility creates a kind of calm confidence that people feel immediately in a noisy world. The person who chooses presence over performance often becomes the most unforgettable one in the room. When you genuinely listen, you are telling the other person something every human being longs to hear, even without saying it. You matter, your experience matters, your voice deserves space, and that emotional experience stays with people long after the conversation ends. That is why listening is not just a social skill, it is a form of emotional generosity, and emotional generosity is deeply attractive. People may forget your exact words, but they rarely forget the feeling of being truly heard. If you want to build this habit, begin with something simple in your next conversation. Do not focus on what you are going to say next. Focus on being fully there. Let your mind settle. Look at the person. Pay attention to their voice, their eyes, and the emotion beneath their words. Listen not to respond, but to understand. You can also practice this inwardly. Spend a few quiet minutes each day without distraction, and notice what is happening inside your own mind. Listen to your fears, your hopes, your restlessness, and your silence, because the more honestly you learn to listen to yourself, the more compassion and depth you will bring when listening to others. And that is where true magnetism begins, not in being the most impressive person, but in being the most present, not in demanding attention, but in creating peace, not in speaking more, but in understanding more. On Stoicism Breath, this is the kind of strength that matters, because when your presence makes people feel calm, valued, and safe, you no longer need to chase connection. People are naturally drawn to it. On Stoicism Breath, the journey of true magnetism continues with a deeper understanding of listening, not only to others, but also to yourself. When you begin to listen to your own inner voice, you start to notice things that were always there, but often ignored: your fears, your hopes, your quiet doubts, and even the silence that exists beneath the noise of everyday life. This kind of self-listening is powerful because the more honestly you understand your own inner world, the easier it becomes to understand the emotions of others. Compassion grows naturally when you recognize that every person carries invisible struggles and quiet dreams within them. True magnetism does not come from how much you speak or how impressive your words sound. It comes from the feeling people experience when they are around you. A person who truly listens creates a rare experience for others. They make people feel seen. They make people feel understood. And in a world where so many conversations are rushed, distracted, and superficial, that feeling becomes incredibly valuable. A good listener does not need elaborate compliments or dramatic speeches to make an impact. Their presence alone communicates respect. Their silence becomes a space where others feel safe enough to open their hearts. When you practice the art of listening, your eyes begin to express attention even before your words appear. Your body language becomes calm and open. Your silence no longer feels empty but supportive. People sense that they can speak freely without being judged or interrupted. Over time, this creates something remarkable. You no longer become just another person in someone's life. You become the person people seek when they need calm understanding and emotional safety. That is one of the deepest forms of human magnetism. The Stoic tradition teaches that listening is a sign of strength, not weakness. It shows that your ego is not dominating every moment. You do not feel the need to prove yourself in every conversation. Instead, you focus on understanding the experience of another human being. This quiet humility radiates confidence. It signals emotional maturity, and people instinctively respect that kind of presence. From this foundation, the next powerful habit begins: cultivating inner peace. There is a certain kind of magnetism that is difficult to describe but easy to feel. It is the calm presence of someone who remains steady even when everything around them becomes chaotic. When others panic, they breathe slowly. When others react emotionally, they remain composed. When others lose control, they still carry a gentle, calm expression. That kind of steadiness creates a feeling of safety for everyone nearby. Inner peace is one of the most powerful forms of attraction, because people naturally move towards stability, the same way travelers seek shelter during a storm. Stoic philosophy explains that peace does not mean escaping difficulty or avoiding challenges. It means refusing to allow your mind to be controlled by them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that tranquility comes from living in harmony with reason. In other words, peace appears when your reactions are guided by understanding rather than by impulse. The Stoics understood a simple but transformative truth. We cannot control the events that happen around us, but we can control how we respond to them. And the moment you truly understand this, your sense of strength changes. Imagine your mind as a body of water. When the water is calm, it reflects the world clearly. But when the water is disturbed by waves, the reflection becomes distorted. Our thoughts behave the same way. When the mind is filled with anger, fear, or worry, it becomes impossible to see reality clearly. Only when the mind settles does clarity return. Peace is not something people are born with. It is a habit that must be practiced daily. In stressful situations, the Stoic approach is simple: pause, breathe, and ask yourself one important question: is this within my control? If the answer is yes, then act wisely. If the answer is no, then release the struggle and allow the moment to pass. This small mental shift creates enormous emotional stability. Modern culture often encourages immediate reactions, quick opinions, and constant performance. But individuals with inner peace move differently. They pause before reacting. They observe before speaking. They reflect before acting. That deliberate calmness creates a sense of quiet authority that stands out naturally without effort. A peaceful person does not need to prove their strength because their behavior already demonstrates it. These individuals are not easily shaken by praise or criticism, by success or failure. They understand that circumstances constantly change. The only thing that remains stable is how they choose to carry themselves through those changes. Because of this, people feel comfortable around them. They do not expect you to solve every problem in their life. They simply feel calmer when you are present, and that feeling alone builds trust. Cultivating inner peace does not require leaving society or isolating yourself from the world. It begins with creating moments of silence within your day. Step away from constant notifications and noise. Sit quietly for a few minutes and simply breathe. Let your thoughts pass without judging them. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to remain steady even when life becomes unpredictable. When a person develops genuine inner peace, it becomes visible in subtle ways. It appears in their eyes, in their movements, and in the rhythm of their breathing. They speak calmly, they walk calmly, and they respond calmly. And because this calmness cannot be faked, it carries a powerful authenticity. The person who can remain steady during chaos and still offer a sincere smile becomes deeply admirable. The next Stoic habit that builds magnetism is speaking with purpose. There are people who say only a few sentences, and suddenly everyone in the room begins to listen closely. Their voice may not be loud, but their words carry weight. Meanwhile, there are others who speak constantly, yet few people truly hear them. The difference is not volume, but intention. Stoic thinkers believe that every word has power. Words can comfort someone during a difficult moment, but careless words can wound deeply. That is why wise individuals choose to speak less, but with greater awareness. Epictetus once advised that a person should remain silent unless their words are more valuable than silence. This principle encourages thoughtful speech rather than reactive conversation. Speaking with purpose means your words come from clarity, sincerity, and calmness rather than from the need to impress others. You are not speaking to dominate a conversation or win an argument. You speak because something meaningful needs to be expressed. And when people sense that authenticity, they naturally listen. Those who understand the strength of silence recognize that silence itself can carry enormous presence. Knowing when to remain quiet demonstrates emotional control and self-respect. In a culture where everyone rushes to express opinions, the person who pauses to think stands out naturally. When you slow down and choose your words carefully, people recognize that you are speaking to contribute something meaningful rather than simply filling empty space. The people we admire most often follow this pattern. They are not the loudest voices, but their words stay in our minds long after the conversation ends. A single thoughtful sentence can influence someone more deeply than hours of careless talking. This is why speaking with intention becomes a reflection of character. It shows that your mind is calm, your thoughts are organized, and your words are aligned with your values. When your speech reflects sincerity and wisdom, it creates trust. And trust is one of the strongest foundations of human attraction. People listen not because they are forced to, but because they feel the authenticity behind your words. That authenticity becomes a natural extension of your inner peace, and your presence becomes something people respect as much as they admire. On Stoicism Breath, there is an important truth about communication that many people overlook. A single well-chosen word spoken at the right moment can completely change the direction of someone's day. It can calm a worried mind, encourage a tired heart, or bring clarity to someone who feels lost. At the same time, a careless word spoken without awareness can wound someone deeply, sometimes in ways that cannot easily be undone. This is why the Stoics believe that speech should never be careless. Speaking with purpose is not only a matter of intelligence, it is a reflection of honesty and character. People are extremely sensitive to inconsistency between what someone says and what they actually do. If your words promise calm, but your behavior shows frustration, people notice the difference immediately. But when your words align with your actions, something powerful happens. Trust begins to form. Respect follows naturally. The Stoics often reminded themselves of a simple principle: do not talk about calmness, live it. Words gain their real weight only when they are supported by the way a person lives their life every day. There is also another conversation that happens constantly, but is rarely discussed. The conversation you have with yourself. The way you speak to your own mind shapes the way you experience the world. Harsh self-criticism, constant comparison, and silent judgment can quietly weaken your confidence over time. Many people would never speak so harshly to a friend, yet they speak to themselves that way every day. Stoic wisdom invites a different approach. Speak to yourself with patience and kindness. When you learn to treat your own mind with understanding, you naturally extend that same compassion to others. A persuasive speaker may impress people briefly, but a purposeful speaker leaves a lasting impression. True magnetism in speech does not come from volume or clever phrases. It comes from the state of the mind behind the words. When someone speaks from a place of calm sincerity and clarity, people feel that authenticity immediately. Their words linger because they are not just sounds, they are reflections of inner stability. That is why the Stoics encourage speaking less, but speaking with intention. Silence can carry more weight than endless talking when it comes from a place of self-control. When your silence is calm, it communicates that you are thoughtful and present. And when you finally speak, your words carry meaning because people know you are not speaking simply to fill the space. Your words become an extension of your inner peace. And when you speak in this way, you do not just make people listen, you make them respect you. This leads to the next powerful habit discussed on Stoicism Breath: facing adversity with courage. Every human life includes moments of hardship. No one escapes disappointment, loss, failure, or betrayal. Even the strongest individuals experience days when everything they believed in seems to fall apart. But Stoic philosophy reminds us that it is not hardship itself that defines a person. It is the way a person responds to hardship. True magnetism is not revealed when life is easy. It appears when life becomes difficult. Anyone can smile when everything goes well, but the person who remains calm when everything seems to collapse is someone people never forget. A person who speaks gently even when their emotions are intense, who maintains dignity even when they are misunderstood, that is a person who radiates inner strength. The Stoics believe that adversity is not an enemy but a teacher. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles can become the path forward. In other words, every challenge carries the potential to strengthen character. Just as metal becomes stronger when exposed to fire, a human being becomes stronger when tested by difficulty. Resilience does not mean you never feel pain. It means that pain does not define your identity. You may stumble, but you rise again calmer, wiser, and more grounded than before. This ability to recover after difficulty creates a quiet magnetism that others deeply admire. People who have walked through storms and still carry kindness in their heart often inspire those around them. When hardship appears, Stoic philosophy encourages a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this teaching me?" That single question transforms suffering into learning and transforms the individual from a victim into a student of life. The Stoics even developed a concept called amor fati, which means loving your fate. It does not simply mean accepting events, but embracing them as necessary parts of growth. When someone learns to see even difficult moments as opportunities for development, they begin to move through life with extraordinary resilience. Adversity no longer weakens them. Instead, it deepens their understanding and strengthens their character. People with this type of strength rarely need to announce it. Their actions reveal it naturally. They do not complain endlessly about what life has done to them. They do not blame others for every setback. They do not seek sympathy as a form of validation. Instead, they quietly stand up, brush away the dust, and continue walking forward. That image of quiet determination often leaves a deeper impression than any speech or performance. Others may never fully understand the hardships someone has endured, but they can still sense the strength that came from those experiences. They notice it in the calm tone of their voice, the steadiness in their eyes, and the quiet confidence in their behavior. When someone can face adversity with courage and still choose kindness, that person becomes not only strong but deeply admirable. This brings us to the next Stoic habit, valuing integrity over approval. Many people lose their natural magnetism because they become too focused on pleasing everyone around them. They say what others want to hear, they follow what others expect, and they gradually begin living according to the standards of the crowd. Over time, something important disappears, their authentic self. And ironically, the more someone tries to gain approval, the more forgettable they often become. Stoicism teaches that respect comes from integrity, not popularity. Living according to your values, even when it is difficult, creates a presence that others recognize immediately. People may not always agree with someone who lives with strong principles, but they almost always respect them. When your actions remain consistent with your values, you develop a kind of inner stability that cannot be shaken by shifting opinions. That stability becomes the foundation of real magnetism. On Stoicism Breath, there is a powerful truth that many people slowly discover as they grow through life. The more you try to be liked by everyone, the more you begin to lose the very thing that makes you memorable. When a person constantly adjusts their words, behavior, and personality just to gain approval, they slowly fade into the background. But when someone lives truthfully according to their own values, something different happens. Even people who disagree with them often respect them, because authenticity carries a strength that cannot be faked. Stoic philosophy teaches that living by principle is far more important than being liked. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that if an action is truly right, then the opinions of others should not disturb the mind. Praise and criticism are temporary. Today someone may admire you and tomorrow they may judge you. But integrity remains steady through both. Integrity becomes a compass that guides you through the constant storm of opinions, expectations, and social pressure that surrounds modern life. To live with integrity means having the courage to remain truthful even when it is uncomfortable. It means saying no to something that violates your values even if others become disappointed. It means choosing honesty even when silence would feel safer. The remarkable thing about integrity is that it does not need to be announced or advertised. People recognize it through small details, through the consistency of your actions, through the way you treat people, and through the steadiness in your decisions. Many people can remember a period in their life when they tried very hard to be accepted by everyone around them. They changed their tone of voice to fit a group. They adjusted their opinions so they would not stand out. Sometimes they even questioned their own beliefs just to avoid conflict. At first, this might feel like social success, but eventually something begins to feel empty. Because approval from others does not bring lasting peace when it depends on something outside of your control. When your emotional stability depends on how others see you, the mind never truly rests. One moment you feel accepted and confident. The next moment, a single criticism can shake your sense of worth. This is why a truly magnetic person is not someone who is loved by everyone. Instead, they are someone who is respected because they remain consistent with their values. These individuals do not change their characters simply to receive praise. They do not compromise their principles just to feel safe in a group. They continue doing what they believe is right even when no one stands beside them. And that consistency creates a powerful presence. Even people who disagree with them can feel the strength of that conviction. Stoicism reminds us that a person's worth does not come from recognition, applause, or popularity. It comes from virtue, from the strength of their character. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once wrote that no one can live happily if they become enslaved to the opinions of others. The moment a person stops chasing approval, something remarkable begins to happen. They start rediscovering who they really are. And when someone reconnects with their authentic self, their presence becomes magnetic in a way that no performance can imitate. Integrity does not make someone cold or distant. It makes them trustworthy. People may not always agree with someone who lives with strong principles, but they know that person will not deceive them. They know that person will not betray their own values for convenience. This reliability creates a deep form of respect. It is why people of integrity often become the ones others turn to when they need honest advice, emotional stability, or a calm voice during difficult decisions. Living truthfully is not always easy. At times it can feel lonely. There may be moments when others misunderstand your intentions or label you as difficult simply because you refuse to follow the crowd. But there is an important realization that eventually becomes clear. Temporary isolation is far better than permanently losing your sense of self. The people who walk away because you live authentically were never meant to remain in your life. The people who stay remain because they recognize the real person you are, not the version you pretend to be. Over time, integrity develops its own quiet magnetism. It does not demand attention, and it does not need to be explained. People begin to admire it silently because they recognize how rare it is. Trust becomes natural. Respect grows without effort. It is similar to light. Real light does not need to prove that it shines. It simply shines, and the darkness fades on its own. The same principle applies to human character. When you live according to your values, you no longer need to search for recognition. Your life itself becomes the signal that draws others toward you. That quiet strength forms the foundation for the next Stoic habit, focusing on growth rather than perfection. Many people spend a large part of their life chasing perfection. They want to speak without mistakes, act without errors, and appear flawless in everything they do. But the pursuit of perfection often creates pressure, anxiety, and constant self-doubt. The more someone tries to appear perfect, the further they drift away from their authentic self. Stoic philosophy teaches a different path. Perfection is an illusion, but growth is real. A truly magnetic person is not someone who never fails. It is someone who continues improving no matter how many times they stumble. The Stoics understood that life is a continuous process of learning, and that mistakes are not interruptions to the journey. They are part of the training itself. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that when you fall, you simply stand up again and continue walking forward. That is victory. Failure is not the end of development. It is the moment where development truly begins. Just as muscles grow stronger only after being challenged and strained, the human mind becomes wiser after facing its own struggles. There is something interesting about the idea of perfection. The individuals who try hardest to appear flawless often feel distant to others. But the ones who openly acknowledge that they are still learning often inspire deeper connection. They remind others that it is acceptable to be human, to make mistakes, and to grow from them. True magnetism does not come from doing everything perfectly. It comes from maintaining the courage to keep improving. People who are committed to growth radiate humility, persistence, and authenticity. They do not need to compete with others, because their focus is simply becoming a better version of themselves each day. And that quiet determination creates a presence that others admire and remember. On Stoicism Breath, one of the most powerful lessons from Stoic philosophy is the idea that progress matters far more than perfection. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that if you fall, you simply stand up and keep moving forward, and that alone is victory. This simple idea carries enormous wisdom, because in the Stoic view, failure is not the end of the journey. It is part of the training that shapes a stronger character. Just as muscles grow only after experiencing resistance and strain, the human mind grows wiser only after facing challenges, wounds, and difficult lessons. There is something interesting about the way people think about perfection. Those who try hardest to appear flawless often create distance between themselves and others. When someone constantly tries to present a perfect image, it can feel intimidating or artificial. But the individuals who openly admit their flaws and acknowledge that they are still learning often inspire deeper connection. They remind everyone around them that being valuable does not require being mistake-free. It only requires the courage to learn and continue moving forward. True magnetism does not come from always doing everything right. It comes from never stopping the process of growth. A person who is committed to self-improvement radiates a quiet but powerful energy. It is the energy of humility, persistence, and authenticity. These individuals are not obsessed with proving they are better than others. They do not constantly compare themselves or compete for attention. Instead, they focus on one simple goal: becoming a better version of themselves than they were yesterday. That attitude naturally makes them admirable and memorable. Think about the kind of person who is patient with themselves when they make a mistake. Instead of punishing themselves, they pause and reflect. Instead of collapsing after failure, they ask a different question. What is this experience trying to teach me? They understand that every fall contains a lesson and every scar represents a life lived with courage. This perspective transforms failure into wisdom and struggle into growth. Stoic philosophy teaches that happiness does not come from flawless performance, but from strengthening character over time. When you focus on growth instead of perfection, something important changes inside the mind. Fear of mistakes begins to fade. You become more open, more flexible, and far more compassionate with yourself. You no longer demand that today must represent your absolute best version. Instead, you aim for something more realistic and more sustainable, becoming slightly better than yesterday. That small shift creates a powerful transformation. When you stop trying to appear perfect, you begin to appear genuine. And authenticity is deeply attractive because many people are tired of pretending. They are tired of living behind masks that society encourages them to wear. When someone dares to live honestly even with imperfections, it gives others permission to do the same. That is where real human connection begins. This is why Stoicism encourages a focus on the journey rather than the destination. Each day becomes an opportunity to practice patience, discipline, and trust in the process. Progress does not always appear in dramatic leaps. Often it shows itself in small, steady steps repeated over time. But those steady steps eventually shape a person who is stronger, calmer, and more grounded. In the end, the most magnetic person is not the one who has already reached the destination. It is the person who continues walking forward with steady eyes, an open heart, and a mind willing to keep learning. They understand that life does not demand perfection. It asks only for effort, honesty, and growth. Stoic philosophy often reminds us that we cannot control the final outcome of every situation, but we can always control the effort we bring to the process. When attention shifts away from results and toward daily effort, something powerful begins to happen. Strength develops quietly. Confidence grows naturally. And the individual becomes magnetic not because of appearance, status, or clever words, but because of the discipline and sincerity they bring into every moment. Looking back on this journey, it becomes clear that true magnetism has never depended on external beauty, popularity, or social recognition. It grows from the peace, self-mastery, and honesty that a person expresses through everyday actions. The 6 Stoic habits: listening deeply, cultivating calm, speaking with purpose, facing adversity, living with integrity, and focusing on growth, are not just techniques for becoming more attractive to others. They are practices that help someone rediscover who they truly are. Because when a person learns to master themselves, something important changes. They no longer feel the need to prove their worth to the world. They stop chasing approval because they realize that real value does not come from how others see them. It comes from the respect they hold for themselves and the consistency with which they live their values. A person with inner strength is not someone who is always right or always successful. It is someone who is calm enough to recognize mistakes, correct them, and continue growing without losing their sense of balance. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that nothing brings peace to the soul except being true to yourself. When someone lives in that way, magnetism is no longer something they try to create. It becomes the natural result of how they live. Others begin to feel that strength through subtle signals. They see it in the steadiness of your eyes, the attentiveness of your listening, and the quiet consistency of your actions. In a noisy world where so many people compete for attention, the person who lives with calm integrity becomes deeply captivating. On Stoicism Breath, the goal is not to become perfect, but to become real. Each day choosing growth instead of perfection, peace instead of performance, and authenticity instead of approval. Because the strongest and most enduring form of magnetism is not about making people look at you. It is about making them feel calm, respected, and understood when they are near you.